Okay, we're live and we'll resume where we were. Uh, we're going back on the discussion of the automobile dealers, dealerships, and to continue our discussion, we had some discussion the other day from Tesla and some of the electric vehicle companies and to open dealerships. And one of our concerns has been that we want to make sure that everyone has a level playing field. The existing dealers in Vermont, and because it is a new item and it's the future of a lot of electric vehicles in the state. And so it gets kind of complicated, but I guess we can continue our discussion. We have some of the auto dealers here today, I believe. I think we have, uh, let's see, who do we have? We have Brian Hoare, I believe, a dealer, and we have Mitchell J., a dealer in Montpelier, I think, in the room. And who else is going to testify today? Liz?
We have Brian Hoare, Mitchell J., and Claire Buckley.
Okay. Who would like to lead first? And I know they probably are aware of the discussion we've been having. And like I said, we have a lot of auto dealers in Vermont. And one of the things I think we're all concerned about, we want to make sure that everyone abides by the same rules and regulations if they're opening a dealership. So with that, Brian Hoare, would you like to go first? Or probably,
Sounds muted.
how about Claire Buckley? Would Claire like to go first?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in and then Brian can go after.
Okay,
after
tell
me.
us a little something about yourself and who you represent.
Sure. My name is Claire Buckley. I have not been in this committee this year, but I work for a firm in Montpelier, Leonine Public Affairs, a lobbying firm. One of my clients is the Vermont Vehicle and Automobile Dealers Association. And for those of you I haven't had an opportunity to meet in person, hello. And certainly I'm familiar with this committee as I've been in it many, many times. But today we wanted to talk about S47, the direct-to-consumer motor vehicle bill. And I was going to talk a little bit about some background on the franchise law, since you had your committee, we did listen to the discussion last week and they had a lot of questions about that. So I was going to get into that. Brian was going to talk a little bit about the economic investment of dealers, and Mitchell has some other industry related discussion. So let me launch right into mine, and hopefully Brian will find his voice in the meantime. VADA believes that the independent franchise dealership model is the best way to sell and service motor vehicles, provide protections to Vermonters purchasing vehicles, and provide the local jobs and tax revenue that Brian Hoare is going to outline in his testimony. So basically every state has a motor vehicle franchise law. Vermont's law can be found in Title IX, Chapter 108. And in 2009, this committee spearheaded a major rewrite of that law. And the legislative findings recognize that, quote, the distribution and sale of vehicles within the state vitally affects the general economy of the state and the public interest and public welfare. And it goes on to say it is necessary to regulate vehicle manufacturers, distributors, or wholesalers and factory or distributor representatives, and to regulate franchises issued by the aforementioned who are doing business in the state in order to prevent frauds, impositions, and other abuses upon its citizens, and to protect and preserve the investments and properties of the citizens of the state. It's also significant that the franchise law recognizes the findings in that law recognize the inequality of bargaining power between a motor vehicle manufacturer and one of its dealers. Dealers make substantial investment in infrastructure on behalf of a manufacturer. The local investments by dealers ordinarily entails hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in construction of dealership facilities, service facilities, tools, inventory, training, and advertising, all on behalf of the manufacturer. The dealer is dependent on the manufacturer to supply the vehicles to sell to support that investment. the franchise law sets the basic ground rules that govern the relationship. For example, the law requires a manufacturer must have good cause before they can terminate a dealer. And I would like to point out 3 ways that the factory store vertically integrated model that you're considering in S47 doesn't provide the same level of protection that the franchise dealer model does. And the first is that consumers benefit from fierce intra-brand competition under the franchise dealer model. So approximately 86% of car shoppers can go online to conduct research before they go into a dealership. Car shoppers know that the manufacturer's suggested retail price, and they get information on what other options and the costs of those options. Then armed with that information, they go to different dealers of the same line make and negotiate price. And the dealers compete with each other on price and service to sell the vehicles, and that drives down prices. So there's a saying that a Ford dealer's stiffest competition is another Ford dealer, and that really is true. In the factory direct model, the manufacturer sets the price without the consumer having an ability to negotiate. And some may argue that dealers are, quote, middlemen and add costs to the system, but that's a myth because all manufacturers have retailing costs regardless of how they distribute the product. The second way under the franchise model that there's a benefit as opposed to the direct to consumer model is that there's an alignment of economic interests for warranty work and safety recalls. So as you know, manufacturers are liable to perform covered warranty and safety recall work on their vehicles. Warranty work and safety recall work for a manufacturer is an expense. The manufacturer has a disincentive to do it. Franchise dealers have a financial incentive to fix vehicles under warranty and safety recall since they're reimbursed by the manufacturer. Whether the repairs are covered under warranty is not always black and white, and it's often a gray area. And the dealer is the consumer's advocate when it comes to warranty work. Dealers hold the manufacturer accountable for their obligation. And imagine a consumer trying to call a manufacturer in a dispute about whether a particular repair is covered by the manufacturer's warranty. The dealer is the consumer's voice, and their economic interests align because both want the manufacturer to pay claims that should rightly be covered under a warranty. Compare this to a vertically integrated factory store manufacturer engaged in direct consumer sales who also owns their service center where there would be no independent advocate for the consumer. Also, dealers provide early warning for safety recalls as they often notice a pattern in defects in vehicles in performing safety work. And because dealers are independent from the manufacturer, they're more likely to bring these safety defects to the attention of the public. And the third and final thing that I'd like to point out is that the franchise model provides greater long-term accountability for the consumer. Franchise dealers also service vehicles when a vehicle manufacturer goes out of business. There's plenty of manufacturers who have gone out of business over the years. Some examples are Oldsmobile, Pontiac, Saturn, and Saab. Many franchise dealerships sell multiple brands and generally remain in business and will have trained technicians to give a consumer a place to go for help. If a direct to consumer manufacturer goes out of business, the consumer has nowhere to go for parts, safety, or service, or their recall work. Finally, I would like to address one issue brought up last week by the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. They were critical of a provision in the franchise law that requires manufacturers to reimburse dealers for warranty work at the same hourly rate they receive to perform non-warranty work. Similar provisions can be found in other state laws. And before this requirement was added in 2009, manufacturers often denied or underpaid claims and there was little recourse for dealers. The warranty is a contractual obligation of the manufacturer to the consumer. So if the manufacturer doesn't pay the full cost of warranty repair, as is their contractual obligation, who will? It's going to get shifted to the non-warranty customers. So the significance of this retail reimbursement rate can't be understated in terms of ensuring that consumers can obtain safety and recall work on a timely basis. And I'm just going to leave you with two documents from the National Auto Dealers Association that are on your website with my written testimony. All of this is written down. And the first is titled Consumer Benefits of Your Local Franchised Auto Dealer, which gets into a little bit more detail on the three items that I just pointed out. And the second is a more detailed piece called Auto Retailing, Why the Franchise System Works Best. And your committee last week, in your committee, you discussed the history of the franchise law, why we have franchise laws, and this gives some more information about that. So that's what I have to say. I don't know if Brian if we can hear Brian now, but I'd be happy to pass it back over to him.
Sure. Thank you very much, Claire. That's a good overview. Brian, are you available with us?
Hi, Senator Mazza. Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. I had
Good
to
to see
dial in.
you and Jay there, both Dodge dealers,
Well, thank you. For the record, my name is Brian Hoare. I'm the owner and vice president of Goss Dodge Chrysler Ram Jeep in South Burlington. After working for the previous owners, the Goss family, my dad purchased the business in 1979. I've been working here since the early 80s, late 80s. But anyways, we added the Jeep store back in 2019. Between both stores, we currently employ about 100 Vermonters. I also serve on the VADA board of directors. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk about the economic impact of new car dealers in Vermont. Vermont's new car dealers are longstanding Vermont-based, many of them family-owned like ourselves, that are important to Vermont's economy. Licensed and franchised motor vehicle dealers have made a tremendous investment in Vermont for decades. This includes not only human capital investment in employees and their families, as well as the physical capital investment in dealer facilities, and they're located all over the state of Vermont. Dealers are major employers in every area of the state. According to NADA's study from 2019, the annual contribution of new car dealers shows Vermont 79 new car dealers creating over 10,423 jobs in the state, and that includes 3,237 direct jobs with an average annual income of over $56,000 and with a payroll of $182 million. Vermont's new car dealers generated a total of $2.6 billion in sales and paid $156 million in state sales tax in 2019. As this committee knows, dealers collect and remit to DMV a significant portion of the purchase and use and other taxes and fees on the state's behalf. I have to say I'm especially proud of my fellow Vermonters for the resilience in meeting the challenges of COVID-19 over this past year. Sales were certainly down somewhat, but better than anyone might have anticipated. Dealers rallied to embrace procedures that kept employees and customers safe and their business going and generating taxes and fees for our state. Much of that was made possible by the dedication of our state and federal elected leaders, legislators, and government agency staff who have and continue to work tirelessly to help navigate through this pandemic with all the information, education, and financial resources. And we are very appreciative of those efforts. I provided you with NADA's 2019 report on economic impact of Vermont new car dealers. And I really do appreciate this opportunity to meet with you this morning. And we'll turn this back over to you, Claire or Jay, Mitchell Jay.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. Jay, yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here today. I'm Mitchell Jay, the owner of Midstate Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, Midstate Hyundai in Berlin, Vermont, and Upper Valley Auto Mart, a used car dealer down in White River Junction. I've been a dealer since 1998, and I currently employ 41 Vermonters. Like Brian, I serve on the VADA board, and I represent Vermont dealers on the National Auto Dealers Association Board of Directors, or NADA as we refer to it. I mentioned NADA because last week I attended our virtual annual NADA convention, which has industry-leading speakers, 60 workshops, and hundreds of exhibitors covering every aspect of the auto industry. The theme for this year's show was a world of change. And if there's one thing dealers are familiar with, it is change. Whether it's completely changing the way we sold and serviced cars during the pandemic, or adapting to the increasing technology like connected cars, electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and mobility services, we adapt. Electric vehicle options, as we all know, are expanding, and enthusiasm will increase, I think, as the technology continues to improve, think cold weather, prices come down, and the infrastructure builds out. It's interesting if you consider that the franchise dealers sell most of the EVs in Vermont. According to data compiled by Drive Electric Vermont from the Department of Motor Vehicles and from the Agency of Natural Resources, as of April of last year, there were 3,912 EVs registered in Vermont, of which 541 or 13% are Teslas. There are 52 unique models of plug-in cars registered in the state. About 55% of the 2,171 of the EVs are plug-in hybrids sold by franchise dealers. And I believe franchise dealers are the only ones selling the plug-in hybrid vehicles. Of all the partial hybrids, again, I think they're all sold. About 45% of the 1,741 all electric vehicles, so your actual BEVs, of those 541, or about 32%, were sold by Tesla. So again, the franchise dealers are selling the majority of them. I've included a document from Drive Vermont that'll include that, the table that you can take a look at and everything. But I think what it demonstrates is that most Vermonters, consumers, are finding that they can buy electric vehicles at franchise new car dealers in the state. I want to point out that I think sometimes there's a misnomer, we don't, but franchise dealers, we understand the importance of EVs and what they'll have on our future. Manufacturers, our manufacturers are investing billions of dollars in new plug-in hybrids and battery electric vehicles. You know, if you look last week, several companies announced big increases. General Motors has set a 2035 target of phasing out all gasoline and diesel vehicles globally. So, you know, that's 2035, a timeline to transition to an all fully electric vehicle lineup. Volkswagen AG plans to double its share of sales that are fully electric this coming year, with a high end of the target suggesting it could come close to matching Tesla's entire global output and deliveries. The German car maker aims for battery electric vehicles to be 6% to 8% of sales this year, up from about 3% in 2020, according to a presentation by their chief executive officer that was published on VW's website. Ford Motor Company said it was doubling money it plans to spend on electrified vehicles to $22 billion through 2025, so fairly close out. And I actually, during the NADA convention, had a chance to listen to Ford CEO Jim Farley speak about Ford's focus on connected commercial electric vehicles and how they'll lead to repeat business and new revenue opportunities for its dealers. Farley said Ford was deliberately picking BEV versions of its Transit van and F-250s as some of the first in their EV wave that'll make them a little different as they concentrate on the commercial segment, where they think the inroads will be better and that they'll get more of them out there. I've also put in with the report where you can look at a forecasted list of upcoming EVs that was supplied by Glenn Mercer, a consultant for the auto industry. He got this from Alan Bernstein, and it's encouraging. If you look at it, it's a real charge of electric vehicles that are coming in early 2020 here, not something we're talking about in late 2020. You know, VAD as ourselves has been working with the northern states for coordinated use and air management. That's a mouthful at NESCOM, but with a dealership work group, Drive Electric Vermont, BEIC, Energy Action Network, Mileage Smart, Replace Your Ride, and Agency of Transportation Planning folks like Michelle Bumauer, to flesh out programs around the country that have the best public outreach programs, the best salesperson training for EVs, and some of the best processes for new and used car dealers. And we've been working on used vehicle inventory process of EVs and BEVs and making them increasingly available as we're seeing the inventory of those start to build out there in the used car market. We're also working to figure out how to effectively deal with vehicles that are turned in and destined for scrappage as we swap out the fleet. Vermont's recent passage of the Global Warming Solutions Act will put additional pressure on reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector and accelerate this work. I believe dealers will play a critical role in getting more EVs on the road. EVs are our future, and we're committed to providing the best distribution, service model, and sales model to our customers. Franchise new car dealers in 2017 celebrated the 100th anniversary of NADA, our National Trade Association. For over 100 years, we have been evolving to meet customers' expectations. We've witnessed countless advancements in technological improvements, and we've witnessed manufacturers come and go. Despite the challenges, new car dealers have adapted. We've met the challenges, listened to our customers, and are the preferred channel for the purchase of a new vehicle. Here in Vermont, I believe new car dealers are an integral part of their community, providing employment, training opportunity, and charity work. Local dealerships give back to the community. You know, off the top of my head, I was thinking Green Up Day supported by the 802 dealerships over the years. We've got car dealerships that give out cars for scholastic achievement to young students. I know here at my own dealership, I was really proud to team up with a couple area businesses in the Salvation Army and Great Eastern Radio to do Stuff a Truck, an event that this year in the pandemic, we had a great outcome from the community and filled not one, but started to fill a second tractor trailer load of food. And I got to tell you, it was with great pride a few years ago when I saw my daughter and Dave Birmingham from Burlington Hyundai stand with Hyundai's Hope on Wheels program and donated $100,000 to UVM's Medical Center for childhood cancer research. Local new dealers care about our community. We believe their customers, our customers, value their relationship with us as local businesses. We're invested in our communities all around the state. We're doing our part to sell EVs that are available today. And as we prepare for the EV deluge that's coming, we'll be ready. You know, with regards to S47, VADA has been reviewing the language, and we've been talking about it. Because this is such a significant issue for us and Vermont consumers, VADA has engaged a franchise expert who's worked with several other states to write language that allows for DTCs to sell while trying to mitigate the impact on dealer investment in franchise laws. Remember, those laws were put in place to protect dealers and consumers. We cannot make any guarantee what they'll come up with, but we're hopeful we can come back to the committee with some language. And I really appreciate you taking a few minutes to listen to me ramble on this morning.
Well, it's always educational to find out what the dealers are doing. Okay. Questions, or who would like to speak next? It's anyone else? Yes, Senator Kitchell.
I have a question. It makes me wonder, we're taking a lot of testimony here, but is this an issue that is under our jurisdiction? It seems when we're getting into franchise laws, we're getting into commerce, we're getting into, I'm raising it, Anthea, are you on in terms of obviously we're getting testimony on what is in the best interest of the consumer protection, which model of sales, franchise versus manufacturer, direct to the consumer, provides the greatest protection. Looking at the policy or the findings, it sounds a bit like Vince Aluzzi wrote them, to be honest, as Claire was reading them. Is this perhaps an issue that transcends multiple committees' jurisdiction?
So in terms of both this bill and the companion bill in the House, they were both referred to the transportation committees. In terms of the report that you had done last biennium, that went to the transportation and commerce committees in both bodies. Mm-hmm. And then I learned from Claire's testimony today that in 2019, it sounds like Senate Transportation was the committee that spearheaded the efforts to address the franchise laws. But you were right, it is definitely dealing with issues that are very much within the realm of commerce sort of in addition to the transportation issues that you're dealing with. An interesting thing here is also you do have the dealer franchise law in Title IX, Chapter 108, but then the regulations of the dealer locations themselves and the registration process, that is something that's in Title 23 under the jurisdiction of the Department of Motor Vehicles. But you also have plenty of language and regulations dealing with, for example, the Lemon Law and the arbitration process there, and that being also in Title IX. So there's definitely language in multiple places in many committees that I think would be interested in these issues.
Okay, well, it just seems to me as we're having testimony that it raises, there are many connections, particularly to commerce and, I don't know whether finance has a role here, but when we're talking about a preferred model or the protections or consumer protections, that gets us into policy areas that seem to me are, so I can understand why I got referred to transportation, but what I'm thinking is this is much broader than a transportation policy discussion.
Good question. Okay, so who's got Senator Perchlik?
Yeah, thank you. Well, on Senator Kitchell's point, I think the language of the law is pretty straightforward. That's not complicated. I can see how other issues have been brought forward, but I think it's a pretty simple thing. And even though people have talked about there's different models, I haven't heard anybody providing testimony that the bill does anything against those things. We heard from the Attorney General's office that no problems with consumer protection. So I haven't heard any testimony of people saying that there's an issue with those items, but I get your point that other committees might be interested. That makes sense. And I just want to say that I appreciated the testimony from the dealers. I definitely don't have any qualms or concerns with the value of our current dealerships. I think they're doing a great job. I think the testimony proved that they are great members of the committee of our communities. And I am confident that even if this bill was to pass, that wouldn't change and they would continue to be successful businesses with successful, participation in our communities. And I don't have anything against the dealership model. I mean, I leased my first electric car from a local dealer. My wife has leased 2 Bolts from local dealers. I put down a deposit on the Ford Mustang from a local dealer. I mean, I don't see it as an issue, and I didn't hear from your testimony. It was good to hear, but I didn't hear from your testimony any concerns with the bill. I heard a bunch of stuff about why our dealers are great, and I totally agree. But I didn't hear anybody saying that there wasn't a reason we shouldn't pass the bill. Did I miss that, or are you just concerned about the competition from this? Or I just didn't get from your testimony that you were against the bill, but I'm pretty sure that you are. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Senator Ingalls.
I concur with Senator Perchlik. I see the value in the franchise dealers, and as being involved in that business for 20 years, certainly know the pains and struggles that they do to remain profitable, and know the high wages that they pay and all the good that they do. I'm just getting down to the one question that keeps coming back to me is, where's the rub? Where's the rub of changing a little bit of the franchise laws I think it must be because it's direct to consumer. That's the biggest rub that we have, because I think that any company that comes in here is going to have to build structure. They're going to have to build a brick and mortar. They're going to have to follow the same rules that the franchise dealers follow now. But just wondering if the biggest thing is just a direct to consumer sales.
Who would like to grab that? Oh, Senator Chittenden.
I don't want to jump in front if you were wanting to respond to that, Claire.
No, that's all right. We'll get the questions out, then we can respond.
Great. I would echo a lot of what I just heard from the other two senators. And to one thing you said, Claire, I did have a specific question. I completely agree that too often people fault or vilify middlemen, but they provide not just cost, but a lot of value. And you can look at that in just about every industry. So I firsthand know the value that dealers add. My question is, one thing that you said that was unaware to me before your testimony is that the current law requires manufacturers to have good cause for termination. So I'm intrigued by that as I wrestle with this issue. My hesitation or concern with opening up this direct to consumer is we might get a out of state manufacturer come in, build that bricks and mortar, sell a ton of electric vehicles, and then decide a year or two that Vermont's just too difficult, the winters are too hard, the roads aren't maintained enough, and the Senate legislators are just too difficult to work with, and they'll pull out, and then we won't have somebody here to service those vehicles. So I'm curious if there's a way our legislation could have similar constraints, so that if we do enable direct to consumer, that there will be some caveat that the vehicle manufacturer has to maintain a servicing presence in the state after they've set up shop. But I'm interested to know more about that requirement you referenced about good cause for termination.
Well, maybe I should, if it's okay, I'll start with Senator Chittenden's question.
Okay.
That good cause termination has been in the franchise law for, many, many, many years, even before it was updated in 2009. And it applies to franchise dealers. It's unclear if, say, a direct-to-consumer manufacturer were to come into Vermont and sell direct and have a building, and like say we authorize that in state law, if they weren't put under the franchise law, which we argue that's the model that would be best, and they should just get a franchise dealer and provide all the protections that to the investment that provides. But if this bill were to pass and they had another option and came in here and did direct to consumer, manufactured direct to consumer, there would be no just cause. It would be completely up to the manufacturer in the scenario that you just outlined, where they could make some investment and then say, you know what, actually this, because it's too cold and we're not making any money, we're going to leave. If they were doing it under their own model, there would be nothing that would stop them from deciding to come or go.
So does it mean that the Tesla would have to let a local person take a ownership of a dealership? Is that what we're concerned about? Or I got a letter from someone who was he's a director of Vermont Tesla Owners Group, and he said, well, Tesla can sell vehicles in Vermont online. A quirk in the old state law makes it unclear whether Tesla and other EV-only companies can open a service center to perform repairs. Is that correct statement? What's the old quirk in the law?
Yeah, that's what we're dealing with.
Okay, but I'm just saying, what would correct that? I mean, yeah, I guess I'm agreeing with everybody. How do we make everybody happy in this deal? What do we have to do?
Where's the rub? Where's the problem, the root problem that we need to focus on to find the solution?
I'm happy to jump in, but would Mitchell or Brian?
Sure, whatever. The dealers, we want to make sure that everyone is protected, because we have a good dealer network, and like everybody has stated. But what do we have to do to make it equal for everyone who wants to open a dealership?
Well, if you don't mind,
yeah.
I think at the end of my testimony, I told you that we couldn't make any guarantee, but we would hope that this national firm that we've hired would be able to come back, because they've worked on franchise laws all over the country, and they're one of the premier eminent ones that do it. I think the rub, if we go back over it in this, I'm just trying to, maybe my opinion, and Brian may say, oops, or Claire might say you're off a little, Mitchell, but when we first started looking at this bill, we were looking at that law that did not allow a manufacturer to open a service center in Vermont because of the way it's currently written. And we had some concerns that the original bill from a year ago, it has nothing to do with this, would have allowed them to open up a service center in Vermont. And I certainly felt that not even as much as a dealer point of view, that if they were going to come to Vermont, that they should play on the same playing field. And I will admit that S47 at first blush looks like we're going to say they're on the same playing field. And I would consider this an improvement over what we were trying to do a year ago, which was really just getting, I think, mired in the mud with some of the protections I felt that consumers wouldn't have. I still have some real concerns what happens when consumers try to deal with manufacturers. I've seen it from being on the Lemon Law board for many years. But with that said, consumers that are buying a car from a direct to consumer manufacturer with no service facility hopefully understand those concerns. And I say that because I look at Lemon Law and I know that I probably, if I've had 20 Lemon Law cases, and Brian might be able to speak to this too, I may have one or two where I actually agree with my manufacturer, but most of the times I agree with my consumer. And I've been the one that's helped him do the paperwork to get through that process and make sure the manufacturer's law firms don't bury them with paperwork and requests. And so I still think that, yes, and even when the AG says we have the laws that protect the consumers, I agree. But I've consistently said that when you go up against the manufacturers, they can just paper you in documents until you just run out of time. But I guess what I'm saying, I think the rub now is we're just saying, give us just a little bit of time here to get back this stuff from the people we've hired, because it's hard for us to really make an opinion and say, hey, we recommend this instead, because we're not sure what the best practices are out there. And I'm hoping that we'll have that information in a short period of time. I mean, we did engage an outside law firm to help us with this.
And I would add, you go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
And to Mitchell J's point, I think one of the rubs too is, we're fearful. We don't have a crystal ball. And certainly we are looking at this a little different than we were last year, but it absolutely is, we're just fearful what opening any cracks is going to do to the franchise law and how that's going to have an effect on all of us down the road. Certainly we know electrification is the wave of the future. All of those manufacturers are not on the same playing field, but it's all coming because all the manufacturers certainly recognizes that. And I think that, one of the things that we're all afraid of to the degree with the franchise and opening up this franchise law is, in any way, shape, or form, is that the manufacturer decides to take an all part of their company and just create an all-electric company and follow the Tesla route. And the next thing you know, we've got no gas-powered cars to sell, and General Motors, Chrysler, Ford have all gone electric over here with a separate company, and they've gone around us and got around that franchise law. And now we don't have the small businesses in the state of Vermont and that backbone and that structure. So I just think there's we don't have a crystal ball, and we're fearful of what that'll happen. And I think Mitchell also makes a really good point when we talk about the manufacturer and dealing with the manufacturer. When we talk about Lemon Law, and I talk to consumers on a regular basis, fortunately not about Lemon Law, but when Lemon Law comes up, absolutely, we fight for the customer, because it is a protection for the dealer and the customer. And we do find ourselves on a constant basis fighting for the customer against the manufacturer to get warranty done, to get great customer service out of the manufacturer. It seems to be a regular role for every franchised auto dealer I know. So I think I think we are an intermediary that does a really good job for the consumer. We work so hard to fight for the opportunity to earn a consumer's business and then to earn that consumer's business. And we work with very, very narrow margins. I think, generally speaking, I think, there's certainly a degree of the population that thinks that the franchise system is antiquated, but we have changed over and over and over with technologies. And we are absolutely working very hard and efficiently to, be the right solution for consumers at all times. So anyways, thank you.
I think we're making progress. What I'd like to see, and I heard you were hiring a consultant or someone to look over franchising, but I think we probably can get closer to an agreement. And that's the outcome we'd like to see. So I think, given a little time, what would you like us to do? Because we want to leave this thing with some sort of an agreement that everyone works together, because we don't want to pit one against the other, but we'd like some answers. And do you need to talk to the consultant, or do you need to get back to us? Because it's very clear we're not going to make this decision today. Tell us how we can work together to make up something we all can live with. Who can help me with that question?
Sure, I can jump in on that question. Absolutely, Senator. Like we said, the board has been looking at S47. I think we have some concerns about that exact language, but we are looking at what other states have done, and we are looking to find a way to, to see if there's a way to authorize a direct-to-consumer manufacturer to have a service center and sales, but yet protect the investment that the dealers have made over the years. So we are definitely looking at that, and we plan on having that done, that analysis done. I certainly don't want to make a guarantee to you, Senator, that I am going to be able to come up with a perfect solution, but we are working really hard to see if we can, and we would get that to you as soon as we can. I can't give you the exact time, but I would say, we're meeting now with the consultant and we're doing some analysis. And as soon as that's done, we would be happy to reach out to you and Senator Perchlik and or anyone else on the committee who and let you know that we're ready to talk.
We're in a lot better place than we were a year ago, and I think through some discussion, we all can come up with some sort of agreement. Which I think we're not pitting one against the other. We're trying to get everybody to somewhat agree on a proposal, because we know it's coming, and what's the best solution. And I think maybe I'm missing it, but I think that's what the committee's looking for. But with that, I got any questions. I think Senator Perchlik, you had your hand up. Yep.
Yeah, no, happy to work with VADA again. But I kind of feel like we are a little bit where we were last year, which is that there's a fear that somehow this will undercut the dealers, but we haven't heard how that has happened. It's just a fear, which I understand why you'd have that fear, but I don't think we could, not open this up just based on a fear without some clear, so hopefully the consultant can point to the language in the proposed bill and say, this is the language that's a danger to the dealers. That would be ideal. And I just want to point out, Senator Chittenden had mentioned, opening up direct to consumer sales. We already have direct to consumer sales now. So right now there's over 700 Teslas in the state. And so there's people doing it now. So the question is, do we want to have a service center, and do we want them to be a dealer so we can protect those consumers so they can collect the sales and use tax in Vermont? And I tell you, if we don't do it, they're just going to open up in West Lebanon. It's just that economic development, and everything's just going to go right across the border, which might be good for the local dealers, but it's not going to be good for the overall health of the state. That's my concern, that Tesla, Rivian, whoever else in the future will just say, okay, Vermont is going to go along, just do it over the border where you can do it. And I just want to make sure that we don't just delay, but I'm happy to work with the dealers on finding a way to something they can live with.
Anybody else? Senator Chittenden?
Yep.
Great point, Senator Perchlik. And I see, Mr. Mitchell, you'd like to speak, so I'm sorry to jump in front of you. I thank you for raising that, Senator Perchlik. I just want to highlight too that getting the purchase and use in the state is a attractant to me. So to allow for DTC, so that we make sure that the purchase and use of new cars happens here.
We get it anyway when they register.
My understanding is that could stop happening if we don't allow them to. It seemed unclear to me with Anthea's testimony that the purchase and use might go out.
Oh, okay. I think we need to be very clear, because that's a critical bit of information. Glad you mentioned it, Senator Chittenden, because I thought when you register your car in Vermont, even if you purchased it in New Hampshire or any other place, you pay the purchase and use.
Right.
Anthea.
My understanding is that's the use part of the purchase and use. So if it's going to be registered in Vermont, based on the testimony that Michael Smith gave with the logistics, I think there could be some lost revenue there because Vermont is not sort of extra collecting the use tax if that purchase and use tax has been paid in another state. But I think the Department of Motor Vehicles testified that it's not currently an issue and that they are at present getting it all through the.
Yeah, okay, all right, that's what I remember. Thank you.
Yes, Senator Ingalls.
And I hear Mr. Hoare's concern about the fear and the franchises seeing a successful model coming in slightly different and maybe spinning off another division of just to sell electric vehicles under the guise of, well, we can better train them and all of that stuff. So maybe we ought to be looking at toughening the franchise laws for them as well. So that's not to happen. Most times when I find that somebody has a fear of something, it's because they've got a pretty good sense of what's happened in the past. And I'm not opposed to protecting these dealers even more so to make sure that the investments that they've made aren't going to go by the wayside.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Well, I think that's been a lively discussion. It's not easy, but I think we're making progress, and I look forward to getting some consensus. Yes, Senator.
Mr. Mitchell had his hand up a few times.
Yes, I don't see him. Okay, Senator. Okay.
Yeah.
Jake. Yeah.
Yeah, if you had just a second, I got to say, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. With my limited knowledge, I look at this bill and say, I feel a little more comfortable. And I know we can talk about how this bill is going to protect us if our manufacturer decides to spin off a subsidiary. But I got to tell you the fear that, when you put yourself in a dealer's chair and say, what's your fear? I can still remember the year 2009 very well, waiting to see if I got a letter from Chrysler. And if I was one of the roughly 800 dealers that was going to file bankruptcy and lose everything I worked for. We sat here last week and I was really encouraged when I was at the NADA show because we had Ford CEO talk about their electric vehicle strategy and say that the other reason he was going commercial was the 3,000 plus Ford dealers around the country that would be able to help service these electric T250 vans and F-150. But at the same token, we had General Motors announce that they're starting a new subsidiary to sell 100,000 electric vans. And when asked how they're going to service them, we see competitors out there like Cox Automotive. I don't know how many of you are familiar with them, but it's a huge privately owned company. They control one of the largest auto chains. They own Auto Trader. They own Dealertrack. They own so much of our industry. I start to say it's almost monopolistic. And they've started a division to service cars for these autonomous fleets and large fleets. The next step, I guess, our fear is General Motors goes, okay, let's just spin it off now into its own division that we don't own anymore so that we can get around franchise laws. So, I think the difference is Ford has some history. Ford tried to buy out dealerships in Rochester, New York and Arizona several years ago. They bought several dealers. They combined them. They said, we're going to run with factory policies. 2 years later, they sold the stores because the customer satisfaction scores went in the toilet and their sales went down. Bad mistake. They know enough not to go back. General Motors, I think, haven't learned that lesson. They haven't tried it. So that when you say the apprehension, I want to try to figure this through. And I hate to make it feel like we're saying, give us just a little more time, but hopefully we'll come up with some ideas that'll help alleviate our fears and help consumers. So
major future policy. We want to make sure we get it right. We want to protect the dealers. Like I said, your statements earlier, or one of you stated the amount of money you generate for the state of Vermont. And I know some dealers are spending millions of dollars on showrooms because the manufacturer says we have to do it. And that's it's a commitment. And so for the committee members, if you're looking to buy a Dodge today, you got two dealers on here and you can beat them up, both of them, see, just both Dodge dealers. So. Okay. With that, I think we're going to reconvene about this issue, and we'll wait for Claire to give us a shout. And when you got something for us, and we hope it's something productive that we can move ahead on it. We've had some good discussion, and I think it's we're making progress. So, any other questions? If not, I thank you all for coming today to testify.
Thank you.
And
Thank you all.
committee,
Thank you.
Thank you. The committee, I don't think we got enough time to start our next testimony. we've pretty much used up the morning, and so I think we're gonna have to reschedule the COVID relief from the AOT folks. If that's not a problem, Liz, I'm sorry, but we just ran a little over and we apologize, but that's what happens sometimes. Okay,
No
Okay.
worries.
okay. Anything else?
Michelle's not going anywhere.
No, Michelle's not going anywhere. So no, she's looking at the lake froze over there today. So don't go out on it. It's pretty thin. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, committee. We'll see you all